Hey everyone, it's Kai
and Lafayette, and this is
The Theory of Living. Thanks for tuning in. We're able to bring you this episode thanks to our Patreon members.
Patreon is a subscription-based platform where people can provide support for content creators like us.
Thanks to our Patreon members and supporters, we're able to provide free content on the podcast and weekly episodes.
By being a Patreon member, you'll have access to our entire podcast library, full video and audio episodes, along with much more.
If you like this episode and you feel it adds value to your life,
or you hate it,
please subscribe on Patreon and or leave your review on Apple Podcast.
And don't forget to mention it to your friends over your next beer. Truly, thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Have you ever had a dream, Kai, that you were sure was so real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream and the real world?
If that sounds familiar to you, you're already living in the Matrix.
On today's episode, we're going to discuss the Matrix and the related philosophies surrounding it.
Yeah, exciting.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
So you're probably wondering
right now.
I'm going to keep my on for
Oh
sake.
my god, sorry. Oh.
It's a little hot in here.
Yes. It looks good. I mean, I like winter coats, but very uncomfortable right now. The lighting is really hot and this really hot. So I think after a few minutes, I'm gonna take them off.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering what brings you this episode today,
oh man,
it's interesting.
This was, so I think we thought that this would be a very smooth transition from the last episode where we talked about technology, right? We briefly talked about AI, but we didn't really go in depth at all, right?
No.
Probably a minute or so. I mean, we just literally said the word, and that was about it, right?
Exactly what the machines want. No conversation about what they're trying to do to us.
Right. But because the new Matrix movie is coming out, I think next week, right? Yeah, I'm sure next Tuesday or Thursday, Wednesday. I'm sorry. So we
Go
just
see
watched,
the Matrix.
We just watched the reissued version, the original, 1999.
We got to go see it in theaters. Actually, that was what was exciting. We just happened to be looking for a movie to go see. We're like, oh shit, the Matrix is playing.
I know.
Neither of us saw it in theaters, so we're like, we have to. We've got to go see it.
I don't think I saw the original movie at the time in theater. I don't think so.
I know I didn't. I was in Israel, so I saw it on DVD.
When I was young, I wasn't really a movie guy, so.
Kids these days.
Yeah, whatever. But it was great, wasn't it?
Oh, super exciting.
I gotta say that even after 20 years?
Over 20 years now.
The movie just didn't look old at all.
No, it seems like it could have been released yesterday.
Exactly. I mean, that was crazy. But I remember 1999 because it was very special year for me, graduating high school, and another thing was that there was this worldwide fear.
Y2K.
Yes, Y2K bug, also called the Millennium bug. So, a lot of people thought that there would be a, global mayhem, right? Ranging from the erroneous mortgage calculations to infrastructure damage, but nothing happened.
Rookie mistake.
But it was real fear, though. I mean,
Absolutely.
The behind the scenes, took it really seriously.
A lot of panic buying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why I remember the year. But really funny thing is that I do not remember the Matrix coming out.
How can we be sure it actually ever came out?
What's that?
How can we actually be sure it actually ever came out?
Well, we got to assume that whatever we're perceiving is true.
That reminds me of a specific philosopher, French
Right.
one.
Yes. You want to say his name? Because I can't pronounce his name.
Descartes?
No.
Oh, you're talking about simulation and simulacrum.
What is his name?
Jean Beauregard. It's French.
You're having a hard time too. Okay.
It is. It's difficult.
Whatever. Yeah. But I wasn't gonna really talk about it right away. But you want to talk about him?
Yeah. Why not? Let's go into it.
Yeah.
So early on in the movie, you'll see that Neo has a couple visitors after having I believe, a pretty, horrific dream. and they're paying him in cash, and he takes the cash from him, shuts the door,
Right.
goes back into his apartment, grabs a book from the shelf where he stashes his
Right.
money, and that book is titled
Yeah.
Simulacro.
You recognize it
Simulacro.
pretty quickly. I
Yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with the work, even though I'm just
Mhm.
mispronouncing the name of both the book and the guy.
Right.
So I guess that's a little telling.
Right. I even looked it up, his name, on YouTube and on Google, and I heard the pronunciation. I'm like, I can do this, easy. But then after a few minutes, I couldn't.
Yeah, when you hear it, you're like, oh, that's a very pronounceable
Yeah,
name.
exactly.
And then 2 seconds pass by, and you're like, how
Right.
do you say that name?
Yeah. But the movie, I wanted to start with why it is so good. I mean, I wanted to talk about that first before we actually going into all the references that exist. I think it was the first thing, obviously, very highly stylized, right?
Mm-hmm.
The revolutionary action sequences, and it created a new word, the bullet effect, right? Created by using multiple cameras, basically creating this impression of time slowing down, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Neo is dodging bullets and Trinity is stopping in the air, like this motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that was completely new.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a similar technique in the 60s. Don't quote me on that, but it existed before, and then it was called something along the line of motion picture, something like that. But the what they did in the Matrix was just another level.
Next level.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the traditional Chinese martial arts movies where you use a lot of the wires and things of that
Absolutely.
nature to capture it.
Absolutely.
But like you're speaking about, the technique they were allowed to use in this film
Mm-hmm.
was just multiple cameras to kind of get that effect, rather than having somebody suspend it
Mm-hmm.
via wire and then just rolling the camera in a circle or something of that nature.
Yeah. So the Wachowskis, they were big fans of the Hong Kong action films.
Oh, we can see that.
So
easily.
they actually directly went to the legendary choreographer Yun Woo Ping, who actually directed Drunken Master and choreographed Kill Bill as well. I mean, he's a legend.
Wow, he's old.
Yeah,
he's
he's a
old.
legend.
Both of those?
And they watched his movie. I mean, not directed. The Fist of Legend. Actually, we talked about this the other day. The Jet Li's movie.
Yeah.
But he choreographed that movie, and Wachowskis watched that movie. We need that, right? So they went to him right away, directly, and he asked him to choreograph their movie. And he said, yes, yeah, sure, I will do it. I mean, he had years of experience doing it, and he told them that even a person who has never experienced, wire action can do about in 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that a lot of actors in The Matrix took a lot more than that.
It's definitely difficult, actually.
Right.
It's funny. One of the teachers I studied under in Austin for Tukong, he worked with Frank Miller to do Sin City.
Oh, nice.
So Tukong,
I didn't know that.
Grandmaster Yi. Yeah, I gave him an honorary black belt, but they had
Mm-hmm.
done a lot of wire work. And then separate within that dojo as well, there
Mhm.
was another company, Stunts, that were pulling people from that dojo to do the wire work. And I heard similar things about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But that's only if you have a background in air awareness or you're
for sure.
natural, whereas other people can take a lot more time. That's really cool, though. I'm shocked. I had no idea the same guy that did The Drunken Master was the choreographer for
yeah,
Matrix.
that's the guy. Mhm.
It definitely shows. Wow, that guy's got a huge career then. I wonder if he's still alive. Probably not.
I'm sorry, I don't know actually. But he's a legend for sure. I mean, I've seen so many. At the time, I didn't know, obviously, but I was a huge fan of Hong Kong cinema as well. As I grew up,
Is it 'cause you're Asian?
Movies. What's that?
Is it because you're Asian?
No. Well, believe it or not, Hong Kong cinema was bigger than Hollywood when I was growing up.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Was it bigger than Hollywood worldwide,
Asia.
or just
In
in
Asia,
In
I
Asia.
think.
Okay,
I think.
that makes sense.
Worldwide, obviously. I mean, it was popular worldwide as well, but not as big as Hollywood's. But it was, back then the industry was so big and there were so many talents and money in it that the quality of movies were so good. So good. Yeah.
Wow. So it being more popular there in Asia, obviously, were movies dubbed or were they just subtitled? And how were they subtitled? Oh, really?
Well, because what I know, I don't know anything about too much about Chinese, the language itself. But what I heard is that because there are so many dialects, that's why they had to dub, and that's what I heard. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. Okay. So when you saw the movie, it was dubbed in Korean.
Oh, not dubbed in Korean, dubbed in Chinese.
Oh, dubbed in Chinese.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, that was pretty normal in the 70s, I think, right? Maybe in the 80s too. But yeah, I think that was the case, at least in the Hong Kong cinema.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So you want to get into the philosophies and maybe some of the undertones in the movie? Because
I like to mention that also another thing about the Matrix before we're actually going into many references. I mean, it's part of a reference too, that the Matrix is very postmodern. That there are just a lot of references. There are a lot of creativity can be seen as something that are original, right? But also creativity could be something that creating new values by rearranging existing values, right?
Yes.
So in that sense, I think the Matrix is very creative.
I would agree. Agree. It's taking values and things that we've already known and touching on the philosophy again. It's extrapolating certain things to make the story and touching on them, which is why I imagine they chose that book to pay homage. While it's not a direct representation of his work, it also uses some of the ideas he has in there and then extrapolates and builds this crazy, unique, and beautiful and cool and new fascinating world and concepts that, while they've been around for a long time, maybe not presented in such a digestible manner. And maybe it'll encourage somebody to go check out his work. Yeah. Rather than just saying, oh, yeah, this is what this guy was trying to get at. Because, like any book, a movie's never going to do a book full justice. And that's not what the point of the movie was anyway. Right. So they're separate things that have similarities.
Absolutely. I heard that he was kind of angry after he watched the movie. But I mean, we totally understand why he was, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you feel like your work's being maybe misrepresented or dumbed down or, whatever have you. I understand how that can be frustrating, but like we discussed before we started this podcast was it can be something somebody does to just pay homage and show respect, and that I don't think they had any ill intent towards him or they were purposely trying to dissuade people from the complexity of his work. Because, I mean, any philosopher, that's a lifelong endeavor, even more so than just making a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, the movie, though, the story unfolds in a very conventional way, too, right? If you look at the format of the story, progression of the story, I mean, it's very commercial, right? I mean, there's awakening of the character, and then
the hero's
training,
journey.
And then friends and family, betrayal, and
Spoiler alert.
Resurrection, all that, right? I mean, the story unfolds really
Christ-like figure over here,
right? Well, and that's kind of, I mean, I didn't want to talk about it right away, but there's a lot of reference to religion. I mean, specifically Christianity.
Oh, absolutely.
So I was gonna start with that actually. That if you look at his name, Thomas Anderson in The Matrix, Thomas means that twin, which represents his two lives in The Matrix, and in how should we call it? The outside of the Matrix.
Reality? In this regard, so this is where it gets interesting.
Right.
Is for all intents and purposes, people would consider that base reality. I would make the argument, though, if I ever woke up like Neo and found all that out, I would no longer believe that base reality could exist. I am merely experiencing one subset of reality that could be stacked infinitely wide, infinitely deep, fourth dimensionally.
Yeah.
So it would kind of remove a lot of maybe inherent value or truth claims from the universe and maybe morality in the way we see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I rightfully so, right? I mean, it'll be very confusing. I mean, more than confusing, it'll be impossible to prove it.
Yes, yeah. That's the thing. And the funny thing is that even right now, sitting in this situation, for all intents and purposes, we can't prove or interface with base reality. We're merely interacting with a concept of what we believe to be reality. And, I mean, that's seen in the way we can't have any absolute. They're just constructs upon constructs that are typically human-created or tools we use to decipher and try to understand the universe, typically in a mathematical way and scientific way, because it's brought in us the most return on investment, I guess you would say. It's made life easier to navigate.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil this, but basically the whole idea of all the references and all this is basically your perception is true, right? I mean, sort of that's the idea, regardless of what real truth is. Right? Yeah.
So to touch on that topic too, who I mentioned earlier was, they didn't reference him directly in the movie, but way before even Jean Beauregard, I can't say his name, was... I think Therefore I Am, which was, wow, I just had his name in my head. I can't believe it's slipping. Yeah, thank you. Descartes, obviously, polygenius mathematician who made the argument that, we have to understand how can we actually interface with reality and that we're actually interfacing with reality. For all I know, I could be being tricked by a demon. All these things could just be a clever illusion pulled over my eyes. How can I actually tell that I'm engaging with it? And thus he read, I wish I forgot the Latin. It's ergo something, but directly translate to English, I think, therefore I am. And again, there's a lot of problems with that statement in and of itself, but it was a milestone, philosophically speaking, which then we could make more extrapolations in reality. So, obviously Kant touched on this. What are we doing? Theorizing. We engage in this reality. Even if it's not base reality, we have to make some sense of it to navigate our world and progress. So we have to make the assumption.
Right.
Like you're saying, the Matrix forces you to say, this is reality. There has to be action based on what I know.
Right. So interesting, right? But going back to the first reference, religion, specifically Christianity, Thomas, like I said, in Twain, Two Lives, and also
Thomas
in the New Testament, one of the 12 apostles, right? Who doubts the resurrection of Jesus, right? Which is similar to the character itself. He starts to doubt his reality, right? And then Anderson is meaning son of Andrew, which originates from Andreas, meaning man or human. Jesus calls himself son of man, remember? So that sort of indicates that what the character is, which is also solidified by his another name, Neo. It's an anagram for one, the one, right? So like all in all, already the movie tells you what it's going to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But also other names have all the meanings, I think. The Morpheus too, the god of dreams, right? So I think that's about reference to the religion, and you probably want to talk about the next one.
Obviously, the opening line right there, Morpheus, god of dreams, right? So there's a obvious one that can't be missed, even going back further than Descartes. It's going to be Plato, right? The cave, the allegory of the cave, that we're merely seeing shadows upon the wall, imagery. It's not actually reality. It's the form of things, which was a very interesting.
But it's true. The shadow is true to those shackled men in the cave.
Yes. Yeah. It's their reality. For all
Right.
intents and purposes,
Exactly.
that is their experience. Again, their perception, their senses they're forced to trust. They have no other option in this regard.
Yeah.
So it's touching on that again, which is go to say that The Matrix has popularized and kind of made a lot of material digestible in a unique, fun, entertaining way.
Right.
These are no new concepts.
Right.
They're just rehashing them differently. Like you said, they're changing the building blocks and rearranging them so they appear new. But can anything really be new?
Mm-hmm.
We just
Yeah.
have copies of copies of
Right.
copies of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the very like we said earlier, the very idea of postmodernism, and it could have been a complete failure, complete thoughtless and poor pastiche, but it wasn't. They did really really well. Usually, if a movie or a story references too much, then it just becomes typically trash. Like, what are you doing with all this? But I mean, you can see how meticulous they were when they were creating this story, from the names and the references, the consistency of the references, and the visual effect to create the world, right? Like, on the surface, it looks like just, really cool action movie.
Yeah.
And you can watch it that way.
It can
and it's
be
a
that
great
way.
movie,
Yeah.
even without knowing all the references.
Yes.
But with all the references, you see, the movie was ahead of time, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's why it's stood the test of time. The story speaks for itself, and surprisingly, the action scenes hold up incredibly well. Granted to the choreographer and the director taking that hint from Hong Kong cinema. I mean,
Yeah.
one of my favorite scenes is when he figures out he's the one and he's fighting the agent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's just blocking both hands, and then he's like, "Oh, wait, I can do this
Yeah.
with one hand."
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh shit, he can do it with
Yeah.
one hand."
I love this scene.
And that's, I mean, brilliant and beautiful, very well done.
Yeah.
And the fact that the movie has so many Easter eggs, touches on so many different philosophical views from, Eastern Asia to ancient Greece, France to, Europe. It touches on a lot of things. So you can go back and find new things you might not have known before. Or once you go find those new things, you can go read the work it's referencing to and then
Yeah.
go back and watch it again and have a deeper, more complex understanding of the Matrix and what they're ultimately trying to get at. I find one thing super interesting is that humans, for whatever reason, in the movie and apparently in reality, have to have some type of belief system. So here they are dealing with a very technological world, so much so that the Matrix exists. Machines essentially run reality as far as we're aware. Yet you have oracles, you have prophets, you have prophecies. These things that we 100% usually align to religion, spiritualism, things that are the opposite of technology a lot of times, are still tied into the human condition. And they've put it in a way where the prophecy, being Neo and able to bend the Matrix is also a technological feat, not only a spiritual one.
Yeah.
So it's a very cool kind of fusion of two things that typically are at odds with each other: science and religion, belief and the scientific method and what we can prove using that.
Yeah.
It's a very, very unique approach on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's post-modernity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then this is going to be actually, good opportunity to talk about, for the first time ever, Asian philosopher. I mean, we're not going really in depth, but there's reference to Zhangzi's The Butterfly Dream, just like similar to the Plato's Cave. That you wanna introduce the story about?
I don't know it well off,
Well,
off
I mean,
my head. It's
this
been
really
some time since I read
simple
it.
story that he dreamed that he was a butterfly, and basically he wakes up and he's confused that, it's him who dreamed of being a butterfly, or butterfly being him, So it's similar to Plato's Cave, basically, that, so arguments on the authenticity of reality. Yeah.
The
I just wanted
duality.
to, touch on that because we haven't really talked about or mentioned Asian philosopher's name before.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a really interesting one to get into because there's a lot more depth there with him as an individual.
Yeah.
That'll be a later episode, but he's
Right.
a very interesting guy. It's funny what he's touching on. He kind of touches on some other work as well that to even be able to grasp some of the concepts he's communicating, if you can grasp it, it is not the concept.
Right.
Which is paradoxical in itself. The second you have it in your hand, it is slipped through, which, even though it seems contradictory, I think we all have experiences like that. Maybe we just haven't found a great way to explain them, but I think we all know that feeling. When you're holding on to something so tightly, it goes away, or kind of like a fleeting thought on the tip of your tongue. It's an interesting experience, and something in the Matrix that would be a glitch.
Yeah.
You know, something they display throughout the movies is deja vu, for example. Oh, deja vu. That's a glitch in the Matrix. Something's been changed. So, again, touching on what is reality and what does it mean for us, and how do we interface with that? How does it change our lives?
Yeah, I think, the progression of the thought, the world's biggest concern seems to be that it was the question of what is reality, but also is moving into the sort of related, but to the question of who am I, right? Identity. So it is concerning time, but very interesting time because there is a lot of things to think about. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing it challenges as well is if free will actually exists. If prophecies are true and occur, then we really have no say in the matter, it would seem. Yet everybody is so bent on trying to enact their will upon the world, whether it's in the Matrix or what they depict as base reality. If you were in that situation, say you got unplugged.
Okay.
How would you feel? Would you want to go back to the Matrix? Would you want to fight against the machines? What do you think you would do? I know it's a difficult question to answer because you'd have to experience it to actually give.
Right. But I think I have to assume that both realities or both worlds, my perception is very real. I have to assume that, right? That's the whole premise of it. But if that's the case, then I will have to
Betray the ship. Kill the chosen one.
I will have to actually. I think I would probably follow that guy who betrays everybody. Remember that guy who wants
I don't
to go
remember
back to
his
the
name,
Matrix?
which is
yeah, I
funny
forgot his
because
name,
we
but he's
just
an
watched it.
important character.
Very
because
important.
he's the only one who knows about both worlds, but he wants to go to Matrix without any knowledge of his world.
Yes.
Right? It's a very interesting character.
Yes. Oh, man, that gets into... we'll have to come back to it another time.
Right.
But talking about if you had the ability to basically alter reality in any way you want, there was a paper published, I believe in the last 20 years, talking about this, that eventually over time, and I'm just summarizing the end here, that if you had that much freedom and power over your reality, you would eventually want to know that you had no power at all and just continue to live life
You know what?
essentially
Actually,
normally.
I'm going to answer that question because so Neo is being able to defy some of the rules in the Matrix, right? So I would test myself if I can do the same thing in the unplugged world.
Oh, yeah. That'd
be sort of one of the ways to gauge or determine whether or not which world is real and I wouldn't use the word real, but which world is defiable and which world is not.
Yes.
I'm going to start from there.
So you'd probably operate in the world in which you had the most power.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I think that's a very relatable thing. I think most people choose worldviews and beliefs and value systems where they feel they have some level of control over themselves or over their reality, whether that's true or not. I, on the other hand, would...
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. You want the right answer. You've come to the right place, my friends. And cut. Oh, wait, where do we go? So I would totally understand wanting to go back to the Matrix.
Okay, I'm hot. I'm gonna take. Sorry, guys.
He had a tank top under this.
Oh my god.
What is going on? I've got a turtleneck on.
Sweating, dude.
Must be reality. You don't sweat in the
Sorry
Matrix.
about that. It was so hot.
Don't apologize. Just fix it.
I fixed it. Yeah.
Well, good.
I couldn't focus.
Okay,
Yeah.
now for the perfect answer.
Yes.
Suspense.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I would totally understand wanting to go back to the Matrix. I, however, could not understand wanting to go back to the Matrix then have your memory wiped. For all intents and purposes, that is death. If you have no memory of your past,
Yeah, I agree.
it is essentially rebirth.
I didn't say that though.
You
The
didn't say
character
that. I'm
though,
saying
yeah.
that for that character.
Yeah, that's the part I couldn't understand.
Because he knows
Right?
he's done a bad thing. He would rather not live with the grief or the guilt.
Well, I mean, yeah, I understand his reasoning, but at the same time, like, look, why would that be good to you?
Yeah, zero-sum
I mean,
game.
good to that new person with a new identity, but not to you. Like, like you said, it's that to you.
I'd say for all intents and purposes that I've been saying that phrase a lot. I would say that's intellectual suicide. That's what that choice is.
Yeah, suicide in general, I would say, but you're dead. I mean, you wouldn't have any memory. So, yeah, I mean, just that fits the definition of death.
Yeah.
So
why not just continue to help
yeah,
another
I think,
cause or come with
I
your
don't
own
know, man.
cause?
I don't think his reasoning was explored properly. Here we go, some negativity about the movie.
I think though.
Mm-hmm.
That
I'm sorry
is-
if I didn't understand properly, but I thought that's sort of scratch on the surface, perfect surface. You know.
perfect surface.
Yeah.
I think the average person would be that individual.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's more people that would rather stay in the Matrix.
Well, yeah,
remain in
that
the
I
Matrix.
understand, but without the knowledge of your current identity.
Yeah, I think most people though, if they were unplugged, all they would want and fight and strive for is to go back to the Matrix. I think Zion and base reality would be full of more people trying to take advantage and live in the Matrix. Because here's the funny thing, it is a better life.
Yeah.
For all those people, it is a better life. And if human civilization is about just trying to better life and further the species, you've checked all the boxes. Unless you think there could be something greater than the Matrix.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's the argument they make. I haven't seen the other two in a long time.
Yeah, it's a hard question, but also you can make more decision, right? Because in terms of your own purpose, I mean, totally understandable they want to go back to the Matrix, but if you're thinking about, what is a moral decision for the humanity in this case, I think you shouldn't go back to the Matrix because you're under the suppression of the system.
Interesting.
So it's not about you, it's about the humanity.
True. Then I would pose the question is my idea, my values, my beliefs, my moralities, are they just byproducts of the system, of me living in the Matrix and in that human world? It's funny that the human world looks almost no different than the Matrix as far as value systems are concerned.
Right. I mean, that was the purpose of creating the Matrix in the first place.
Yeah. It's just, you would think, though, that in all these varying levels of reality that it would be a completely different world, not just slightly different, because it's pretty much the same world. One's just much shittier than the other.
Yeah.
So if I was in that situation, I think I would want to recreate value systems and looking at things entirely differently.
That's a good point.
Maybe I couldn't, though, because I'd grown up X amount of time with these values thrust upon me culturally, historically, in the Matrix, in my perception of reality. Maybe I would never be able to escape it, but I believe I'd want to do my best to try. You probably wouldn't have a lot of people that saw eye to eye with you on this, but I mean, at that point, reality's kind of off the table. Death is meaningless.
Yeah.
If I was there, that's what I would think.
Yeah, maybe, I think
Nihilism.
you've just made a really interesting point. I think that maybe this is not about what's reality or not. Maybe this is about, what would you do, under, we've used this word so many times, totalitarian system. What would you do under the suppression of someone and in the world of someone's purpose, right? Maybe that's more of the question than asking which is reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing it's cool because they take that idea. It's just the way in which they apply it. They apply it in a common way, we were being enslaved, essentially. We're being farmed.
Yeah.
We're being cultivated. That story's been told since the dawn of time. It's happened historically. Wars have been fought. People have fought against all types of oppression. I think the oppression is not subtle enough, and it's not targeting the values and the true core of the system, the way we think about the system. So in that way, I feel, again, it's an action movie, and it succeeds very well at what it does. Maybe this is the lover of philosophy in me, but I want something deeper. Like, oh, okay, cool, but we're just at war with machines? Like, that's it? Like, this is basically just another war? And maybe we can't escape that. Maybe that's part of the mortal coil.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is to be human as well. There's some things we just can't escape. But I would have loved to see them try to touch on that. But again, maybe it wouldn't have been a successful movie. Maybe it would have felt too weird because there's no way to relate to it or understand it. But me personally, I dig that stuff. I love listening to music that sounds weird, seeing movies that doesn't make sense upon initial view.
Right.
That makes me think differently and feel things differently. Because then I realize, like, whoa, I could have experienced the world in
Are
a
you
very
officially
different way.
saying that you could have done it better?
Oh, no way. Absolutely not. I mean, okay, well, actually, what constitutes better? In this sense, are we talking about, like, gross domestic product? Are we talking about life's changed? That's such a hard metric. Definitely not. The movie's a masterpiece. I'm saying the movie is great. But the philosopher, I'm not a philosopher, but I would love to be one, in me wants more. I just want more, I want more depth. Even if it's not there, I want it.
The thirst, right? Yeah, I agree. And also, do you know why the pills, when Morpheus explains
You mean these pills right here, Kai? Okay, we couldn't use a blue one because, copyright infringement and all that jazz, but it's close enough.
So the pills, in my opinion, is that indicates that the ignorance is something to be cured. I think that's how I took it. And, I thought about why red? Why red for the Matrix? And why the red pill on the right hand instead of the left hand? Right?
Interesting. I don't know. I can take a stab at it, but I'd probably be very wrong.
Well, the red is one of the few colors that has
Death associated with it, I know.
Well, like
Horror,
both sides of meanings. Like it could be like there are positive meanings, but also there are negative meanings. Like positive as in, passion, love, but negative side you see like warning. Your warning signs are all red, right? I mean, death, blood, violence, right? So when we see red, you automatically get alert. Like
I totally agree.
Right? I think that's what it was.
And the blue's a bit calming and relaxing, kind of soothe.
Yeah. So it's a good choice, but it's an easy truth. It's not easy truth that you can take.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was indicating. And the reason that it was on the right hand is that, right as in correct.
Mm.
I think that's what it was. I could be wrong. But blue, I don't know well. Blue could have been so many different things, but I don't think they put. I could be wrong, but it could be anything. But red, at least, I think is pretty clear that why they chose red for the Matrix. On the
I can
red
see that.
especially.
It's interesting. I've heard this.
Yeah.
I don't know where I read it, but something along the lines of, if I go to the right, no one is left. If I go to the left, no one is right.
Where did you hear that?
I don't know.
Okay.
But it just
Right.
speaks to this moment very well.
Yeah.
I also think another interesting thing is that he didn't need to give him a pill to let him know. He gave him a physical action to tie consequence to the words and to the meaning to convey it. So you have to take an action, a physical action, for the emotional connection and the knowledge and the understanding. Because he said, all I'm going to give you is the truth. It's not like the pill actually did anything. It could be just empty pills with colors. But it signified a choice and taking action.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I think if you're going to take a leap of faith, so to speak, you have to take an action. And sometimes you don't know what's on the other side. And we can apply this to many aspects of our lives, whether it's going to be starting a workout program or pursuing a love, whether that's a person, a hobby, or something else. Sometimes it just takes a physical action without knowing what's going to happen, which kind of gets into Kierkegaard, and he says that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. But once we make a choice, we can kind of escape that place.
Yeah. Yeah. The like you said, it really signifies the importance of your action, right? I mean, Morpheus also said for that. Also, he says that I can show you the door, but you have to walk through it, right? So you're right. I mean, that's exactly what it was. The pills were not supposed to do anything, but it signifies that you have to take the action. I mean, also, I would go further that freedom is not possible without autonomy, right? You have to take the action, right? So there are so many levels in this movie, but I love it, man.
It's
like
a great
20
movie.
years
Talk
ago,
about it.
like I said, even without all these references, like I didn't feel like I'm watching a movie that came out 20 years ago.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's, sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but isn't the Matrix ultimately what we're aiming for in life right now? Not using all our resources, being able to eat, being able to have a mostly normal life for people. Seems like that could be a very real future, potentially. I don't think we'll have it to the high degree that they showed it. I think it will be much more subtle, but technology has already taken over a part of our lives. We're already slaves in different ways. Slaves to our social media, slaves to our phones, slave to the latest information on the television, the latest movie. And that has such a huge impact on our worldview and the way we perceive the world when all those things are. And this is touching on what, simulacra and simulation talk about. Jean Beauregard. I think I said it right that time. Jean Beauregard.
You did it finally.
I believe so. What he's talking about is that everything basically becomes a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So far that we're not even interacting with reality anymore. We already live in that world right now. You hear that?
Yeah. Also, okay, so we touched on pretty much everything about the movie. I mean, we might have missed, a few things, but I'm sure those are not major part of the movie. But the one thing that I forgot to mention is that, I mean, it's not concerning any references, but Matrix really popularized the trend of trilogy. Somebody may argue that, what about Star Wars? Yes, it's trilogy, but it really didn't take off the trend after the Matrix. That's true. Let's admit that, okay, guys? The fan of Star Wars.
Oh, dude, you've started a war, my friend. Let me tell you.
But that's just true. in terms of years, right? A lot of trilogies.
Yeah,
came
I
out
mean,
after
we
the
had Lord
Matrix.
of the Rings after that.
Yeah,
There's-
and also popularized the trend of filming sequels simultaneously. That didn't exist before.
correct.
For sure.
They did 2 and 3 at the same time.
Yes, and then they released with a 6 months apart, right?
Oh, it was only 6 months?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it
6
was
months
that
apart.
quick.
But they filmed them together,
Right, it was a summer and Christmas release,
because the
wasn't it?
first Matrix was so successful. They were so confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it worked. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the first one's the best one.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue that against that, but I think I know some people who like the second one, the most.
Really? The second one
Well,
was,
because some
wow.
people, some people care about action scenes, I guess.
Look, we got a name for people like that.
Yeah. So,
I don't want to say it on the podcast, but you know what I'm talking about.
so I totally see it why they do, but I mean, in terms of the how complete it is, I think it's hard to argue against the idea that the first one is the best one.
I think so. It's just, it's always going to be difficult to top the first, I think, in any series, because it introduces the
Mostly,
premise. We usually fall in love, romanticize it, then we build up all these expectations in our head for the next
Right.
movie or following movies. So
Yeah.
it can be hard to top those
Yeah,
expectations.
especially in this movie, the first one really throws all the elements of the Matrix, right? And they create the world and show the world to the audience. And then in the second and third one, they explore the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like the progression of it. It's just that the reference. Okay,
Here we go.
Scroll a little bit. The first one was so done well in terms of how it uses all the references, all the different pieces together. It was just almost perfect. But from the second one, in my opinion, that just falls apart. What are you trying to talk? What are you trying to say from this point?
What's the message?
What's the message here? Like, it becomes so messy. It's almost like at the end, you can transcend everything, and after all, the love is most important thing. Like, I don't know where this is going, like this is becomes so messy. But I mean, it's hard to make all three.
You're never going to make anybody, or sorry, let me rephrase that. You're never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
And you and I are just typically guys that want more in depth out of media we consume and things like that. But they're definitely not failures by any stretch of the imagination. We just think they could have taken maybe a different route, a little more interesting.
Yeah. I'd like to pose a question before we wrap this up. Would you be a glitch in the Matrix or the most powerful man in the Matrix?
That's to the audience, not me. We already know the answer for me. Come on. Really? Please. Look at, you see these glasses over here? No, man. I don't think I don't think I'd be a glitch or anything that rare or unique. Just statistically speaking, I don't think that's possible. I think we all romanticize being heroes in our own story, in our own world, and we can be to some degree. Not to the degree they depicted, I believe, but there's no reason we shouldn't try to be. I think that's the more important thing. Even when Neo was told, "Yeah, kid, from the Oracle, yeah, you're not the one. Hate to break it to you. You're just not him." Regardless of that, he took actions as a hero, as if he were the one, knowing full well and believing full well, based off the Oracle's prophecy, he would die trying to save Morpheus. And that, in a very weird way, is what allowed him to become the one or fulfill the prophecy.
Right.
Right. He was a hero, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, and in the movie he dies. I mean, he dies in.
And on the third day,
box.
they roll that stone away. And Neo
Could you not
emerged.
do that, please? We're about to wrap this up, but I mean, that's another interesting part. But I mean, it's not the major part of the movie, so.
3 days, 3 movies. Think about it, guys. It's all there.
I think we've talked about all the interesting stuff, at least, about the movie, and please let us know if there's anything that we missed that you find interesting.
Absolutely. We'd love
Yeah.
to know. Give us some feedback.
Yeah,
And
please.
again, before we go, I'd like to give out a shout out to a few people that have given their feedback. Lee, thank you for
Oh yeah,
talking about the
our good friend Lee.
yeah, thank you for giving us a call and letting us know what you like about the podcast
Mhm.
and wanting to hear more about stoicism and kind of the philosophical ties to our lives in regards to how we conduct ourselves
Yeah.
when it comes to fitness and just our daily interactions.
Right.
We're going to work towards that more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And then Greg Hoffheinz, because you're a bitch. I have to throw you out there. You'll know what it means.
Right. Also, the new movie comes out
You
on
said next,
23rd,
You said next Wednesday?
22nd, something like that. Yeah, I think it's 22nd.
I don't know when the next
It's a
movie
Wednesday.
comes out.
Next
I don't
Wednesday.
watch TV.
Yeah. On the
22nd is Wednesday.
yeah, so it's 22nd. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. So we are excited for that movie. Let's see how good it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so far you don't have a really positive opinion about it.
I don't. I just think it's a
Based
cash
on the
grab.
preview, right? I mean, to be
Preview
fair.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So,
looks
but
like
we'll
they're just
see.
rehashing it, which maybe they'll do it in a creative way. It'll blow my mind, and then it'll be Matrix episode part 2. Oh my God, here we go.
Yeah. We may talk about it if it was, if it is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I think it's time to sign off.
Yeah.
Think about how you might be in the Matrix today. What
Yeah.
values you have based on copies of copies.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Goodbye.
That's this week's episode of the Theory of Living podcast. Thanks for listening with us. We are Lafayette and Kai. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
And if you'd like to help support us, we have a Patreon page where you can subscribe for exclusive content.
Also, please share it with others who you think may find value in our discussion.
Leave a rating, a review, and please subscribe to the podcast.
Thank you again.
See you next time.